Hey, everybody.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. Everything working here?
Everything's good.
Hey, so I've got 10 o'clock. Cindy, do we have everybody on?
If you could just wait one more minute.
Okay.
I'm waiting for April to come on. I think she's connecting to audio.
Hello, I was having technical difficulties trying to dial in.
Okay, so Brent is connected via his phone, so he will not be on video. So Brent, I believe you can go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Great. I'd like to call to order the City of St. Helena Water Advisory Board regular meeting Friday, August 6th, 10 a.m. Roll call, please.
Chair Randall,
Present.
Vice Chair O'Keefe,
Present.
Board Member Chisler is absent. Council Member Shuto
Here.
and Planning Commissioner Hale.
Here.
Cindy, do we expect George, or is he out?
He must be out. I have not heard from him. He did not respond to my email that he was not going to be in attendance.
Okay. So let's move on to item 3, public forum. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board on any item that is not on the agenda and no action will be taken. Cindy, do you show anybody any hands raised or any public comment?
Let me check. And I see no public comment.
All right, I'd like to close then the public forum, move on to item 4, Reports by staff and board. Do we have any reports?
I have something,
Diana?
an item. Am I able to share my screen?
Oh.
Is that possible?
Just one moment. Go ahead and try now.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Not yet.
No.
No, sorry, let me try that again. Okay, if not, can you see it? Share. There we go.
There we go.
Right now? Okay. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of a really great resource. It is dedicated to educating people on how to both save water and save trees. I know that was kind of brought up in the past as a real concern, you know, for our community. We don't want to lose any trees, especially mature trees, established trees. And, you know, this resource also kind of discusses even, you know, if you were planning on planting trees, how you can help those young trees grow and still continue to save the resources of water. So I can provide everyone can provide this link. I don't know if it's something that the city might want to use as well. There's some great video resources here on basically how watering young trees, watering mature trees, how often should you water those trees. You know, typically it says 1 to 2 times per month for mature trees, and then and it addresses young trees as well. On the video, it also refers to this resource from Cal Poly, where that can help you select trees and, you know, California natives, trees that will grow in your area, select it based on kind of the water usage as well, or understand the existing needs of a mature tree that you have in your yard. So I found this a very valuable resource that I just wanted to kind of share with everyone and let people know that there's definitely, it made me feel really positive about the fact that we have, you know, great ideas and ways that even with, I think with the existing allocations that there are for landscaping and, you know, also potentially saving water from your showers and employing things like that, you can definitely make sure that your trees have enough water to get through the drought.
Excellent. Thank you, Diana. Appreciate you sharing that. Any other staff or board reports?
I would just jump in. This is Mark Prestwich. This morning, I had a first look at our July water production figures. So this is data that will be, we're still making sure that it's that the report is accurate, but it appears that our water production was down 37% year over year. So in contrast to the July numbers, it's down 37%. When we looked at the June data, it was down 23% year over year. So this is a positive trend. 37% conservation is a very good number. We were not projecting moving into a phase 3 under the prior conservation factors, and we're going to now apply a 37% conservation factor to our future analysis, assuming that trend continues. So preliminary good news for the month of July.
Great. Thank you, Mark.
This is April. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brent.
No, go ahead, April. I was just saying thank you.
Yeah, I realized I raised my hand, but that you probably couldn't see it. So just want to let the Water Advisory Board know of two things that are coming up. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., we are actually having a water conservation community meeting. So it'll be myself, Mark Prestwich, as well as I believe Mark Rincon is going to be there. So just some little tips and tricks, you know, and some things that we just want to share with the community. And we are also going to do a random drawing with everyone in attendance for a Flume device. So if you can get the word out, or if you want to come join that meeting, it's going to be at 10 a.m. and you can find the link on the city's website. In addition, and I'm going to share my screen, and Diana, I love what you shared with us. So if you can forward that to Jen Weeks, who is actually on the call, and I'll introduce Jen to everybody. Jen is in the finance department, and she is the one who handles a lot of things in utility billing, but also the leak adjustments. And her and Martine have been working hand in hand to make sure that our website is updated. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me get my, oh, can I share my screen, Cindy? What we're doing is as things keep moving on in the water emergency, we're just trying to find ways to update our website to make it easier and easier. So this week, Jen has actually taken quite a bit of time to update our website. Currently, right now, if you click on the water emergency page, it will take you, it's basically a subsection of the Public Works Department. We're in the process of changing that, because once you got to the water emergency page, you literally would have to scroll down to kind of see everything that was on there. We're in the process, and it should have, I'm hoping we'll have this done by tomorrow. But for right now, we basically created its own department page. But now, when we get this linked up here, you'll click on water emergency. You'll have all of those headers right here on the left-hand side. So that way you don't have to scroll through the whole page. If you just want to see, hey, here's the exception permit, you can click right on this page and you'll have all the information for the exception permit. If you just want to look at resources, everything that we've put out is right here. Water Advisory Board, all the information is right here. So just wanted to let you know that we are updating that. Diana, if you can provide that link to Jen and or Martine, we'll make sure that we get that as far as additional resources, because I think that's a great link. And also, Ode, I am a Cal Poly graduate, so go Cal Poly, although mine was Pomona. So that is my update, just for new things happening for the water, for the water emergency.
Great, thank you, April. Any other reports?
Can I ask a question of April? Okay.
Yes.
And also, Mark, I was wondering, that goal that you just spoke of, that's such great news that we had that much of an overall reduction together, our community, from 23 to 37%. Is that something that we could share on the website, that in terms of our community goal and how we're doing with that every month, to make it really clear and just see?
Right. So we're updating also a forecasting tool that's going to be added to our monthly water reports. We're going to have that finished by Tuesday for the council meeting. It's an item for discussion on that meeting, and about that same time, I think, would be an appropriate time for a press release that showcases the new way of looking at that data. Today, we're hoping today, and maybe if we need it Monday, we'll be using that time to finalize that tool. So it probably won't happen today, but I do anticipate some form of positive news that we want to share in probably the form of a press release that also showcases the new reporting tool.
Okay, thank you.
Or enhanced reporting tool.
Great. Moving on to item 5, consent calendar, approval of the July 16th minutes. Any questions, comments, revision to the minutes of our July 16th meeting? Not seeing any. Does someone like to make a motion?
I move for approval of the consent meetings.
And
consent calendar with all the meetings, yes.
And second, was that Dan?
Yes, it was.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Planning Commissioner Hale,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ortiz,
Here.
Chair Randall.
Yes. Moving on to item 6, we have no old business. So moving on to item 7, new business, discussion, direction, and possible adoption of the Water Advisory Board leak adjustment policy. April?
Great, thank you very much. So this is going to be a very interactive process today with the board. So as you're aware, the City Council did direct on July 13th, and then they also ratified it at their council meeting on July 27th, that they wanted to come up with a very objective policy that can be used by the Water Advisory Board to review leak adjustments applications that is based on the City Council's existing leak adjustment policy. Because right now the City Council has adopted a leak adjustment policy, and what that does, it does allow people who have incurred leaks and have corrected their leaks to file for a little bit of a reprieve. The council did recognize at both of the meetings on the 13th and the 27th that people who have leaks might incur penalties as well. So they designated the authority to do some type of leak adjustment policy as it pertains to the penalties. So what I did, the staff did take a look at the current leak adjustment policy, which was attached to the staff report, and we've consolidated it as it relates to the penalties. So what I will be doing is sharing the actual, the draft leak adjustment policy for penalties. And there's a couple talking points that I definitely want to walk through with the Water Advisory Board, get your feedback on what type of policy you would like to establish. And if we can come to an agreement today, we would actually request that the Water Advisory Board adopt the policy. And that means at the next meeting, we can start hearing some of these leak adjustments, the penalty adjustments. So if that works for everybody, I would like to share my screen. And please let me know if this is big enough for everybody to see. Can everyone see it okay? Okay. So again, the section 1, the purpose, overview, scope of the policy. So it does state the City of St. Helena is committed to preventing water waste, but also understands that infrequently a water leak may occur. When a leak does occur, customers can request a credit to their utility bill for a portion of the excess water. This particular policy addresses penalties incurred during a water emergency in which were triggered by a water leak. The Water Advisory Board does have the authority to update this policy. So you'll see at the top, this will be the implementation. And as we go through, if something needs to be updated, we can bring it back to the board for updates. So the language here for the policy, I took most of it directly from our current council adopted policy for leak adjustments. One of the big differences, if you look at the leak adjustment policy that the council currently has, they have two different categories. One is for residential, one's for non-residential. I stripped both of them down and I just put it under one policy. The current policy for leak adjustments is to be eligible for a penalty. For a leak adjustment, the excess water must be 100% higher than normal usage. So this is something, the first talking point with the Water Advisory Board. If you want to keep this same parameters in there, or if you'd like to update it to say to be eligible for a penalty leak adjustment, they have to show up on our leak notice every month. And so this is something that I want to get your feedback and discussion. I feel like we can go through these one by one, come up with a consensus, and just update the policy in real time.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
Can you just delve into a little bit, what was the thinking on the 100%? 100%, and I'm reading that as you're using double the water. Is that you're over 100%?
That is correct. Yeah, that is correct. And that's in our current, just our regular leak adjustment policy. So this is one I did not know if the Water Advisory Board would want to carry this over or potentially change it, because we do have parameters in for, or we do have every month we send leak letters out. A leak letter indicates that you've had 24 hours of continuous usage. And we have both Martine and Jen on the call today that can speak more to those letters that go out because they're definitely more familiar with it. So I don't know if we want to limit this to people who have just been on that report, or if we want to do it 100% higher than normal usage, or take this parameter out completely.
I have a question about that. who is missed if we have it, that we limit it to people who's on the report? What's that difference between 100% and those people that get that notice?
Mark, I'm going to ask either Martine or Jen if they have any feedback on that particular.
I would jump in. I'm going to say that's tough to answer currently without knowing the actual numbers, and it's probably going to be a case-by-case basis. But generally, anyone that's on their report, the usage varies significantly. So there's some people on their report with as little as 7 units, 5 units, but then there's other people on that report with over 100 units of usage. So it's really tough to say without knowing the case.
But like 100% over is a pretty hefty trip, right? I mean, seems like, and if we're, I mean, my understanding, because we're billing cycles 2 months. I just, if a little bit is, it seems like we'd be better off trying to catch as many things as possible. But I'm just trying to understand a little better. I think the more time we spend with this and the more feedback I get, the one question I do have, and just a general question, is it possible to get all this data into a single type of unit, I'd say gallons, as opposed to cons, units, HCUs? There's so many different units. I think, and I understand this is an evolution and a challenging, and it ratchets as we go along. But I think the city's made good progress in making and efforting to make this more understandable to people. But I think one of the challenges that people have is they're mystified a bit by the different sets of numbers on their bill. And they all can be translated, or my understanding is that they can all be translated into gallons. And I think gallons is kind of the most understandable to the most people. And I think it would help if that's possible. I'm not sure how much work is involved to get those units of measure into the same type of unit, but I think that would be a useful starting point. As far as 100% higher, I'm not sure what happens. I don't view 100% as some magical number that all of a sudden that makes sense. I think if I'm over and I'm sincere about my water usage, I think we should be equally sincere in considering.
I think it may be helpful for me to share my screen and pull up the breakdown of how our water penalties were distributed across the board. So we had a report that went to the council at a special meeting on July 13th. And Cindy, if you'll allow me to share my screen. This is just a helpful reminder because I think it provides some context for your decision point here. Let me know if people can see this, but this is a breakdown of both their non-residential, table 4, the first group here, and the residential. So on the far right column, this is the number of accounts with leak letters in this particular month. So we did have more leak letters in the 100% plus category here, or bin. But you can, if you're looking at somewhere north of 0, this breaks it down for you. The greatest need is in that larger category, so we can assume those are likely larger leaks. And leak letters are produced for anyone with more than 24 hours of continual water usage for the water meter read. So this provides you a little additional context.
Hey, do we feel confident that leak letters are actually going out? Because I've had people approach me that said, hey, I got my bill. I was, had a great fine and I had no idea I had a leak. So are we confident that letters are going out to the people with leaks?
I'll have April describe how those have gone out historically and what changes we've made now in July.
Yeah, I'm actually going to turn to Martine because Martine's the one who handles those letters. And just a quick comment before Martine takes over on this. When a leak letter is triggered when you have 24 hours of continuous usage, but if you look at the chart that Mark's referring to here, and I think this is great context, if you look at the very bottom under residential, you'll see number in the category. Let's just look at the 100 plus category. There's 340 people who incurred water penalties. Out of those 340, only 61 of them had leak letters that were sent to them. It doesn't necessarily mean that there may be more that might actually have leaks. However, for the actual leak alarm to be triggered, it has to have that 24-hour continuous usage. So I'm going to have Martine talk a little bit more about how the nuances of that. If you have a leak, it still might not get caught in the leak alarm.
Correct. And just to add on to April's comment, it's all about timing as well. So there has to be continuous water usage, give or take around that billing date. So if it's 24-hour period when the meter read is done, then that's what triggers the account to go on to this report. Previously, the way we would notify customers was via letters. So we would mail letters as soon as the billing read occurred. We ran the report and letters were mailed via USPS. This month in July, what we've done is not only have we sent out the letters right after the meter reads occurred, but we also called each customer on the list. So whether we had a phone number that we can reach or an email, customers were notified via phone number or email within the couple of days right after the meter reads.
Great, thank you.
And I don't know if I'm interpreting it correctly, but in the way the existing policy is written, to me, it feels like it almost discourages a prompt fix when you identify a leak. Because if I haven't had 2 letters and if it hasn't equaled 100% over, but I found a leak and I fix it promptly, then it sounds like I would not be eligible for. Is that the case? Am I interpreting that correctly?
You are, and so those are definitely parameters that we can update for the waiving of the penalties or for any reprieve from penalties. After hearing the discussion so far, I feel like that first bullet point, to be eligible, you must be 100% higher. I feel like it seems like the consensus is actually just to remove that requirement.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing nodding heads. Okay, from at least 3. So I'll go ahead and remove that. And then Mark, if you want to stop share, I'll share my screen again.
Well, I'm actually trying to stop share. There we go. It was on one of my 3 screens.
Since I was on vacation for a couple of weeks, I have to remember how to navigate this again. Okay, so I'll go ahead and remove point number 1. So now the new point number 1 is to be eligible for a penalty leak adjustment. The customer must have not received a leak letter for 2 or more consecutive months. The thought behind this process or this particular parameter is that we do have people that are constantly on our leak letters. So they almost ignore them. And Martine can attest to this, where sometimes it's the exact same people month after month after month after month. They ignore the leak letter. So this was put in there with the intent of we don't want somebody just to blatantly ignore if they're actually receiving a leak letter. We can easily change this to 4, 5. We do know that there are circumstances, and we'll talk about this a little later on, where people have received leak letters. They have tried to find a leak, and sometimes it is very, very difficult to find leaks. We did have a leak adjustment appeal go to City Council. I think it was about 2 years ago, and it was a business, and it took I think it took them literally about 3 months to actually find the leak because the leak was inside a wall and all the water was going right down directly back into the sewer system. So they literally couldn't, and it is very costly to hire a leak detection company. So there are some times where it does take a little bit longer. So this is, again, I would love to have discussion and direction if this seems reasonable, but also knowing that the committee might actually want to add some more verbiage in here that does give a little bit of leeway if somebody is actively trying to find a leak.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Can you add if they've made an effort or if they can demonstrate some sort of good faith effort that they are actively, doing something to find the leak, then, then that can be waived.
I had the same thought. Thank you.
Look at that real time.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. How does everyone feel about that 2 or more consecutive months? Do you want to increase that to 3, keep it at 2, knowing we've added in a caveat that they can demonstrate there's a good faith effort to actively locate and fix any leaks?
I think with the added language that seems there's a kind of escape valve there. So I think that makes sense.
Can I, just to clarify, so if they received 2, okay, so if I receive 1 letter and I don't do anything about it, and then I receive 2, can I still, and then after the second one, I do something about it? Or is it, so basically, if you haven't done something after 1, you're not eligible? Is that how I'm reading that? Or is it you haven't done something after 2 letters, then you're not eligible?
Actually, the way you're reading it, I see we can probably update the language saying they must not have received more than 2.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to check to make sure that the intent is in line with the language.
Because we want people to be addressing the leak after 1 letter. That's the goal.
But we're okay if they received 2 and they adjusted, or maybe that 1 letter got shoved somewhere by accident. I don't know if that's the leeway there.
Well, it sounds like now we're emailing and calling as well.
Okay.
Okay, so do we want to just say, do we want to keep it with the original?
For more than 2.
For 2 or more consecutive months. So it would basically mean they get 1 leak letter, and then the second one, they don't qualify unless they can demonstrate there's a good faith effort. And this, well, especially if we are calling, because Martine, how many leak letters did we have that we called customers on? Typically it's in the 200 plus range.
And it actually went down this month. We were at 195 leak letters that were sent, and also customers that were called for July. 125 of those being customers that were on the leak report the month before.
Yeah, now this is kind of high level, but I think all in all, the water customers, they want to do the right thing. I know, people were absolutely, their jaw hit the table when the letters came out. And I guess my biggest concern with this in general is, we got June letters at the end of July. So really that ship has sailed. So we can't do anything for July. And I think we'll see some radical behavior change in August now that people, have these letters in their hands. And I concur with Dan 100% about, I'm kind of on top of water, and it was confusing to me to read my letter and my daughter's letter. So just, I think we need to make it as simple as possible so everybody can understand this.
The board could choose to remove any reference to the leak letter, and just say demonstrate there's a good. Well, we do address below that they can show that the leak has been fixed.
Yeah, and I understand the intent that we don't want if you've been notified, the expectation is that you're responding, responsive. But, and then to Brent's point, I'm trying to think about, okay, so you get the letter at the end of your billing cycle. You get one letter, is it for one letter for 2 months? Because are the
No,
meters read monthly? And then,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, so the meters are read monthly. We bill bi-monthly, but every month we send out leak letters. So
gotcha.
those are done on a monthly basis.
Okay. And so typically you have at the end of the month, you'll get the leak letter, and then at the end of the next month, you'll get the next one. So you have
It
a
would be
month
yeah.
to respond. Okay.
So does that give you everything you need, April, or do we want to discuss, or do we
So-
need to discuss more?
Still a little muddy on if the direction is actually to keep that, to be eligible that, because right now how it receives is to be eligible for a penalty leak adjustment, the customer must have not received a leak letter for 2 or more consecutive months, or can demonstrate there's a good faith effort to actively locate and fix leaks. So I don't know if you want to keep those parameters where they cannot receive, that, I don't know if you want to keep the parameters for that they can't receive consecutive leak letters without trying to do something, or if you want to take that parameter out completely.
I think it's good as written.
Yeah, and I think with the additional verbiage that even, it sounds like if you are now demonstrating that there's a good faith effort, even if you receive 2 letters, that we would they still could be eligible. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct. Okay. So I feel we're good on this one. Am I getting consensus on number 1?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the next point is directly from the other policy. All leaks must be beyond the control of the owner, agents, tenants, contractors, or anyone occupying the property or using the property that could have reasonably foreseen such a possible leak.
Think that sounds good?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Wow, these ones are easy. So the next point is the leaks cannot be the result of negligence, willful or neglectful behavior.
Yep. Good.
Yep.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
So here's another one. Right now, our current policy is you only get 1 leak adjustment every 5 years. And so I updated this for right now, saying only 1 penalty leak adjustment may be granted for the duration of the existing water emergency. Mark and I have had discussions. We do have properties recently too that were more in the fire areas, literally one on the east side of town, one on the west side of town. Very large properties, older pipes. It's almost like playing whack-a-mole. And so, they'd fix one leak and another leak shows up, and sometimes those are really, really hard to detect. So I don't know if this is something that we don't want to put a limitation on it, or if we want to make a notation that that it's not for the same leak. We want to make sure the leak, because we do want to actively make sure people are correcting their leaks. So we want to get your feedback on this, if we want to add any more flexibility, remove this completely where they can apply for as many as are necessary during this emergency if we have a whack-a-mole situation. That's my technical term.
I would also add that the policy, the city council's policy, doesn't necessarily anticipate a penalty structure. It just refers to a water emergency generally, and we have 3 phases to a water emergency. And under our 3 phases, phase 1 does not apply penalties. We're in phase 2, and penalties apply in phase 2 and phase 3. I do question whether 1 is too few here for someone that happens, maybe it's not a fire issue, but they happen to have an older home and it leaks twice. They fix it, it leaks somewhere else in their system. They incur a large bill, but they've they have worked hard to correct that leak. They've done it twice or maybe 3 times. So the real focus is trying to reduce water loss. Does the board have any consideration for allowing, in more than one penalty leak adjustment? Or there could also be a phrase here that's added to the end that says, or unless other circumstances warrant, additional consideration or something to that effect.
Yeah, I'm supportive of multiple, because I think it's, prior to phase 2, if you had a leak, it wasn't a financial burden. I've seen some of the fines, they're exorbitant now. And I think our end goal here is not to fine people, it's to save water. And so I'm supportive of, kind of some wording where we could potentially address multiple leaks in that period.
Agreed.
Almost suggest just removing 4. And then the absence of the language, I think just, if a leak happens, I think we want to encourage people to fix their leaks. I agree with Brent. I think we could just simplify it and remove that piece. And then you're not stipulating.
Okay, I'm seeing, so I've Dan, I see Diana is in agreement. Am I?
I am. Are all, actually, let me also, so all the leak adjustments, will they all come to during the phase 2 or phase 3? Do they all come before the Water Advisory Board? Or is it part of the administrative process?
Yeah, so leak adjustments themselves they go through the city manager because he does have authority to grant leak adjustments up to 5,000. What will go to the board is any waiving of penalties that were caused by a leak. So the leak adjustments will still be done administratively. And then the only one that will come to the Water Advisory Board is the waiving of penalties.
Okay, so
I think
I'm
where
in
we're at right
support.
now is if we want to completely strike number 4.
I would be in support of that.
I would also.
Okay.
Yes.
And take it out.
Okay. This is the benefit of Zoom. If you do have the real time. So the next section, we did add a little bit else in here. Typically our leak adjustments are in the form of a bill credit. What I did add in here is I did add a stipulation in which the customer can request a refund check once the credit has been applied. The reason I added the second section in there, when we do a leak adjustment, we have a maximum for residential of 300 and commercial is 500. So it's a fairly small amount. So that would pretty much be taken up by 1 to 2 billing cycles. However, when we see some of the penalties, some of them are, $15,000, $20,000. And I don't anticipate anybody would want that much of a bill credit to be stuck on their bill for that long. So I did wanted to give some flexibility and the option for customers to actually request a refund in, in the form of a check.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So here is the next one. I feel like this is going to be a lot more of the discussion. Right now, our current policy for regular leak adjustments is they only get 50% of the excess amount used. So let's say their normal bill is 5 units. They've used 15 units. The difference is 10 units. They only receive a 5-unit credit. So that is the current policy. And this one does tie into one section. So I just want to find out if, get the direction from the Water Advisory Board on what type of penalties are we looking at waiving? Are we looking at waiving 100% of the penalties, only the portion of the penalties that can be attributed to the leak, which we might get in instances where we might not be able to actually figure that one out if their individual meter is not capable of doing a detailed meter read. So I would love to have the discussion, the direction from the board in this item. And
I
City
think
Manager
the
Prestwich.
other, Yeah, and sorry to interrupt there, April. I think the other consideration just to be aware of is under the council's water penalty forgiveness program, each customer today, absent any work or decision of this board, has the opportunity to eliminate all of their penalties on their own by keeping their water allocation and their usage under that water allocation in August, September, October, and November. And under that council policy, all penalties, including the 25% that would be due and payable as a result of the June billings and the 50% due in the July billings, those June and July penalties can be waived. So for June and July specifically, those penalties can be waived if the conservation takes place below those targets in in August, September, October, November.
Yeah, I thought that was well written because it creates an incentive, and you're right, you can kind of work your way out of this fine situation. I'm supportive of that.
The other consideration is that under the council's policy, we're generally talking about the regular bill. We're not talking about a penalty structure on top of the bill. So the penalty structure, as you've seen, starts low, but it really ratchets up once you get to 100% and beyond. It's a fairly significant increase, which is why anyone with excessive water use, large water use, is going to see fairly significant penalties. The penalty is 1 cent a gallon when you're a little bit over, but it climbs to 30 cents a gallon very quickly. So I think this merits some conversation about how to adjust the penalty side of this equation.
So could you reiterate the question exactly that you're asking us right now to weigh in on?
It would be if the board would like to limit how much in penalties can be waived, or if they want to have, like for instance, how it's written right now is, if your penalty is $10,000, you fix the leak, we'll give you $5,000 of it back. Or if the Water Advisory Board would rather entertain the ability to waive 100%. One of the things that was brought up at the meeting, the special meeting on the 13th, and it was mentioned in the staff report, is if we have a way to isolate how much excess water use was caused by, let's say, an irrigation leak, that's probably the easiest one for us to be able to equate to. And this is something I can also defer to Martine and or Jen on. Not all of our current meters are capable of what we call a detailed meter read. A detailed meter read, what happens is we can send our crews out. We can do them as far back as a year. It's a great tool. It is a lot of data, and sometimes it can be 20, 30 pages worth of just literally raw data. But what it will do, it will give us, if the meter is capable of doing it, it will give us an hour-by-hour reading of usage. For us, when it's capable, it's a great tool. I can tell you exactly when your landscape is turning on, what days of the week. And so what we typically can do is when we get that information, we've worked with customers and said, oh, is your irrigation set for Monday, Tuesday, Friday? From, we tell them the times because you see this big surge and a big spike in water usage. When we run those types of detailed meter reads, we can also tell, hey, I can see right away as soon as your irrigation goes on, I can see maybe last month you only had 10 units of water, now you have 100 units of water during that same 1 to 2 hour time frame. So if the meter is capable of doing that, it is very easy for us to be able to see, okay, they had an irrigation leak, they fixed their irrigation leak. We can isolate how much usage occurred during those particular times, and we can figure out the amount of usage tied to a penalty. So it's really easy for us to do that. Well, it takes a lot of time, but we can do it. On the flip side is if somebody has a leak, they fix the leak. However, if we are not able to pull a detailed meter read, there's no way for us to go, okay, it's this amount of water was associated with the leak, unless we just look at what their historical usage is, and we can see it spiked and we can see it went down. So this one might, I don't know if that makes sense. it might be a little difficult to be able to isolate it because that was one of the council's questions that they had if it was able to, but it might not be 100% of the time because Martine or even Jen, from all the meter reads that we get just on an average basis, how many of them can we pull the detailed report? Would you say 90%, 80%? And I don't even know if you'd know the answer offhand.
I personally don't know the answer. I think a lot of it has to do with the age of the meter. So the older meters won't be capable of providing this report. If I were to give a ballpark number, it's probably about 75 to 80%.
85% have that extra data or can provide that extra data?
Yeah, about 75% can.
Would it be acceptable if someone, let's say someone has a Flume device or they're manually reading and they provide that? I know you could probably falsify for manual reads. I don't know. I guess because I'm thinking about if the verbiage was something like, except for when it can be established that 100% of that, leak contributed to the penalty, then it could be adjusted. But it sounds like that would only be applicable for 75% of the meters. And then what about the rest? If they can demonstrate on their own that, yes, this leak happened during this time and I was reading my meter daily and I saw that, would that be acceptable? Any thoughts on that?
Can you make a little more clear for me? Like when you go over, say, and you've got you're going over and you're paying cents per unit, whatever the unit is, additional to your base rate. So you're still paying for the water, the extra water you're using, and then you're getting a second bill based on being over. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So
you're paying for the water, then you're also getting penalized for the extra water you used.
Right. So I mean, I read that as there's already kind of a disincentive in your bill. Your bill is already higher. So I don't. I mean, I can foresee a lot of complications in sort of how do we determine whether this happened this way or this way or this way, and if we can't apply it universally, I think that gets a little squirrely or problematic, I guess. I don't see really a huge downfall in just saying, let's leave that to the discretion of the water board, and each case is a case. I think if you can sincerely demonstrate you're already paying more and you're demonstrating then that you're trying to address it, I don't see why we would put a limit on it. You're still paying more for that water, and we're holding them to account for that water usage, but just not putting an extra kind of boot on their neck for it, which I don't see as all that productive. If we you're already discouraging that water use.
Yeah, and I think that's well said, Dan. I completely agree with that. They're already penalized.
Yeah.
So I would say the more discretion I think this board can have in making case by case rulings is advantageous.
So this could be rewritten as the water advisory board will consider penalty leak adjustments on a case by case basis.
I like that.
I
We'll
guess
consider.
in the past, so kind of saying that the penalty is on the water billing perspective. How effective are the leak letters? Do we see a lot of I guess, I don't know if you have any information on how many customers receive multiple leak letters and don't have some sort of response. I'm sure, in my experience, I've seen businesses that do have processes that run like 24/7 that use water, but I don't know how many of those would, you know, be where it's like, really, this is a leak and no one's responded to it.
We do have several, we have notations in our Springbrook system. Springbrook is our utility billing system. We do have some organizations that have requested that we don't send them leak letters because they do always have 24 hours continuous use. A good example would be like a Vineyard Valley, Stonebridge Apartments. So anything like that where you have like multifamily, that is a really good instance. So we do have several of those. There are several more that we do, you know, residential customers, single family homes, you know, that we continually send them out every month to the exact same place. Martine, would you say that's accurate?
That is accurate. And then, in fact, I've ignored those comments on Springbrook now. I'm sending it to everyone, even if they decided they did not want to receive it, just so that they're aware that they're on the report, especially during this phase of emergency.
Even in a multifamily unit, I would think that you wouldn't have 24 hours of use, like even throughout the like early morning hours. I mean, I guess maybe you would, because if someone has a different schedule, but I guess my only thought there is that, and I realize that there's extra efforts in place to, you know, I think the phone calls are probably the most effective, is getting, you know, having people be reached out to who get those, who receive the leak letters. It's just kind of, I don't know if you're really going over your water use and then you get a leak letter and then it's a get out of jail free card. I don't know if I do understand that there's other penalties in place, but I'm just thinking, you know, that is the reason that the penalty is there, in the event that, you know, you don't want anyone to abuse it. But if we think the risk of having people abuse it due to the leaks, and if everything's written well enough for us to review and consider it, I feel like that should be sufficient. The only thing too is, you know, it's nice to have it in a policy, a certain percentage, so that it is fair upon the board's review, that, you know, you're not giving special treatment to this person or that person.
If somebody brings this before us, though, we would have access to the understanding that they've had multiple leak letters, right? And
Correct.
so you'd be able to kind of factor that in, I think, to your overall, you know, analysis of whether it's reasonable to, and I don't think it would be, you know, just foreseeing something like that if you had a case come before us that you could demonstrate kind of flagrant apathy toward water use. I think you'd have to consider that.
I guess my question would be, so as the board reviews them and determines the leak adjustment amounts, does the board need to create additional standards or guidance for how we decide what is it? 100%, you get 100% waived, you get 50% waived because we've seen this, you get, you know, we're not going to waive it under this condition. You know, does there need to be additional document or standard for us to follow as we review those case by case basis and consider what percentage to adjust by, or what amount?
And your question, Diane, really reinforces the council's, you know, guidance, which is their expectation is that there will be objective standards by which to evaluate requests like this. And if I could just editorialize for just a moment, thinking about the change in policy that we've done, our staff is going to make 190 telephone calls this month to follow up on those leak letters. That's an incredibly inefficient use of time. And with an investment in next generation meters, this will be a text message to our customers and text messages to the city, our emails to the city, and email notifications that will be real time when something like this occurs in the future. There's so much time invested in reading meters and double checking meters, following up on meter reads. An enormous amount of staff time in the field and in the office is being used to address those types of things that can be solved with an investment in next generation meters. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear that after a next generation meter investment, a lot of this process will evolve and our operation will become incredibly more efficient.
That's great. And Diana, I hear what you're saying, and I don't know how to add those objective measures right now to this with the language, because we're saying up to 100% before, which to me still isn't objective. So I'm stumped right now. I don't know how to add that back in.
Can there be a second, based on, can we develop a set of standards? I don't know if that would be or I guess having it in the policy is the best place for it. I like us reviewing it on a case-by-case basis and having the flexibility to determine and not, penalizing people unnecessarily by having a set amount. But yeah, I definitely also see the need to, in order for us to remain unbiased and objective, to be able to have guidelines or something established based on that review. But it would, that would take additional time potentially, or perhaps we can decide at this time.
Yeah, and I see our Public Works Director, Mark Rincon, has his hand raised, so he might have some insight for us.
Yeah, hello. To me, I've seen other cities kind of just create a one rule fits all, because it avoids having to, involve staff in detailed research of each individual leak and the occurrence of the leak and meters and et cetera. What other cities do is they give you a one-time forgiveness, and that's that. That way, it's equal across the board. It doesn't matter who your account is or what your account is. You get one chance, you get the one-time forgiveness up to a certain amount, $500, $300, whatever you guys want to accept. And then after that, your account is noted that you got that one-time forgiveness. You got to keep on top of your own leaks after that. So it kind of puts the burden back on the consumer rather than having the city to invest a lot of time and effort in investigating each individual case and adjudicating every time somebody says, "Hey, I have a leak, come investigate." That's my opinion. I don't foresee the need to invest as much staff time as necessary to research each case, because it takes a lot of time.
What if, so I like, April, what you've started here. How would the board feel about if it was 100% for the first leak and then any subsequent leak, we go back to the 50%? So that allows you the first time you can get a full, and then really after that, you need to be very on top of your leaks, but we still will allow for a reduction of penalties up to 50%. That way we don't have like, oh, you can keep having leaks. I don't know.
I'm reading that as up to 100%.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's add that. And this goes with what we had earlier, where you can't have leaks forever. Right, April, that's already in there. Do we need to add something here?
No, I think we are good, because we do have,
Okay.
Oh, we haven't said anything else. So yeah, because we didn't put any limitation on how many leak penalty adjustments they can apply for. So is everyone okay with the language? The Water Advisory Board will consider penalty leak adjustment amounts on a case-by-case basis, up to 100% for the first leak and up to 50% for subsequent leaks.
I like that.
Okay.
Yep.
Because of this, I'm going to remove number 6 where it says the maximum credit amount because we've added a percentage. Are we okay with me deleting this section?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I did put a caveat in here because we do have it in our other leak policy that hardship agreements may be used to pay the remaining, I'll put any remaining penalties.
Mhm.
Okay. So we're good with number 6 about the hardship. That's an administrative side of things that we've done. And we do that for regular water bills as well. The next section is proof that the repairs were completed must be included with all requests for penalty leak adjustment. Examples of this include a copy of the plumber's invoice or hardware store receipt showing the items purchased or proof provided by the city that water use had returned to normal levels during subsequent months. Because we do have people that just fix it, don't realize that we do have the requirement through the receipts away. It's easy enough for us to go into our software system and we can see 100 units of water 1 month and next it's down to 3 units. So it's pretty easy for us to be able to see if something's been repaired. The other circumstance that comes up, sometimes the leak is literally somebody left a hose on by accident, or maybe a toilet was stuck or a water faucet was left in the on position. So that's something we want to leave at least a little leeway in there, but we definitely want proof, especially if it's a big leak, because they are, I mean, I've seen bills for thousands of dollars that people have submitted, that took them that much to try to find and correct a leak. So everyone is good with number 7?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I'll have to make sure my numbering is, okay, there we go. The last one here is that penalty leak adjustments will be approved by the Water Advisory Board. If a penalty leak adjustment is denied or outside the scope of the current policy, an appeal may be made to the City Council. Wanted to get your, we have our city manager raising his hand.
Thanks, April. I would suggest we change the word approved to considered. Penalty leak adjustments will be considered by the Water Advisory Board.
Yeah, I like
Any
that.
other questions? Okay. Are we in concurrence that everyone is okay with this?
Yes.
Yes.
We're in the home stretch. This is great information. So for procedures, the customer must formally request a penalty leak adjustment by completing a form. I waited to develop the form until after we got the policies in place, but now that we're getting them in place, I should be able to get that. We are also going to add to the penalty leak adjustment, the same that we have for the exception permits that come through the Water Advisory Board, that the customer is consenting to, and they are aware that what is typically considered confidential information, water information such as penalty leak letters, those types of things may be held in a public setting. So that's going to be part of what the form is. The next is that penalty leak adjustment requests must be submitted to the City of St. Helena Finance Department within 60 days. And I highlighted that to get your feedback on it. Of 1, the issuance of the initial bill covering the period in which the leak occurred, or 2, from the date the penalty letter was issued. Wanted to get your feedback if we wanted to limit like the time frame that it has to be considered, so we don't get something a year later. We want to make sure it's addressed right away. I want to get your feedback and your direction on this particular item.
I'd like 60 days.
Yeah, it seems reasonable.
Good.
A month.
No, I think that's good. Do we understand what the difference off the top of our head is between the issuance of the initial bill versus when the penalty letter? I mean, is that, how much lag are we talking about there?
Well, what the difference is, somebody might not actually, oh, actually, no, the penalty letter will come first because billing is done every 2 months and then the penalty letter is every month.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable to me.
Okay. Okay. So the next procedure is the finance staff will verify the a complete request was submitted and verifies the request meets the terms outlined in the policy. So that's pretty standard what we do. And there are times where we might have to go back and forth with a customer if not all the information is there. I left the next one pretty generic, just saying penalty leak adjustment requests will be heard by the Water Advisory Board as soon as it is practical. The Water Advisory Board meets at a minimum once per month. The reason I left this pretty broad is right now I want to say we have about 20, I think I'm looking for, I think Jen has them in her queue. I think we have about 20 requests that are teeing up. Knowing the timing, I don't know how long these requests will take to be heard each individually by the Water Advisory Board. We don't know if we'll be able to hear 5 when you meet, 10 when you meet, 20 when you meet. So we want to make sure that we provide ample time. The good news is as soon as a determination is made as far as how much penalties are being waived, we can issue those credits pretty quickly on the customer's account. The other thing that might take into consideration, it's going to take timing for us to decide, do we need to pull detailed meter reads? Do we need to look up the list to see how many leak letters they've received and how frequently? So we want to give us a little bit of leeway, and I wanted to see if this language is acceptable to the board.
I think it looks good.
Okay, seeing consensus?
Yep.
The next, the customer is notified via email of the decision within 10 business days of that decision. We want to make sure before we had a telephone call or email, because of the rate of volume of telephone calls right now, what we're finding is we're leaving messages, they're calling us back, leaving us a message, so there's a lot of back and forth, and the email definitely is concrete and we have it in writing. So if everyone's good with that, I'm seeing nods on that
Good.
section. Okay. If a penalty leak adjustment is granted, staff will enter the adjustment as a bill credit within 30 days of the decision. Okay. And then the last will be the penalty leak adjustment form, which I will base on this policy.
Good work, April. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank all of you. I know this was a lot to get through. And on that, I would look for a motion to approve the policy.
Anybody like to make a motion?
Mark is raising his hand first, Mark Prestwich.
It's important to take public comment on this item before a vote.
Okay, I'd like to open public comment. Cindy, do we see anybody in public comment raising their hand?
Just one moment. I see no public comment.
And
All right.
I'm sorry, Brent. I'm sorry, Chair. I just had one last question to clarify before I vote on this. So we're saying that there's no limit for times you can come before us with leaks and that'll be this is board's discretion. I just want to be clear on that because I saw we took that out where before, and we're doing that because the penalties are so high and we understand some homes have old infrastructure and there could be multiple leaks, but during the penalty, you can come back to us as many times as you need to.
That is currently how it is, because you're correct, we removed that. So that would be the current understanding that they can come as many times.
Okay.
All right, would somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the resolution as amended.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Roll call?
Just for clarification, that was a motion to adopt the policy?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
As amended.
As amended. Let's take a note. Okay, roll call for Planning Commissioner Hale,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ortiz,
Yes.
Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Chair Randall.
Yes. All right, so it looks like 7.2 has been pulled from the agenda for next meeting. So if we have nothing else, anybody have anything for the good of the order?
You do not.
All right, well, thank you. I know this was a long one, and I think, unfortunately, I think next month might even be longer. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy the day. Appreciate all the hard work, and we'll stand in adjournment.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.